Picture this. You and your spouse are sitting at the kitchen table. The bills are paid, the savings account actually has money in it. You're doing fine, better than fine, honestly. And then your spouse says, "Hey, what if we just book that trip? We've been talking about it for a year." And something in you just seizes up. Your stomach tightens. You hear yourself say, "I don't know, that feels like a lot right now." And your spouse looks at you with this mix of confusion and frustration because they know the numbers. They've seen the numbers. There's nothing stopping you, but you still can't say yes. That's not a budgeting problem. That's not a communication problem. That's something much older than this marriage. And if nobody's ever named it for you, I'm about to. My name is Miles, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychology of money and why smart people keep making the same painful financial decisions. If you're someone who grew up watching your family stress about rent, or you heard "we can't afford that" so many times it became your internal voice, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, we're going somewhere most financial channels won't touch. We're not talking about index funds or the 50-30-20 rule. We're talking about the money wounds you carried into your marriage without even knowing it. And we're talking about what happens when two people, each with their own financial childhoods, try to build a life together. Here's the thing most financial advice completely ignores. Your relationship with money wasn't formed when you got your first job or when you opened your first bank account. It was formed when you were 8 years old, maybe younger. Research from Cambridge University found that money habits in children are formed as early as 7 years old. 7 years old. By the time you're having your first serious conversation with a partner about combining finances, you've already been carrying a fully developed emotional response to money for, 2.5 decades. And if those early years were marked by scarcity, by watching a parent cry over an overdraft notice, by eating the same cheap meals on rotation, by being told no so many times that no started to feel like the only safe answer, then your nervous system learned something. It learned that money is dangerous, that security is fragile, that the floor can drop out at any moment. Psychologists call this a scarcity mindset, but I want to be more specific than that because scarcity mindset sounds like a self-help buzzword. What we're really talking about is trauma, financial trauma, and trauma doesn't care how big your paycheck is now. So what does this actually look like inside a marriage? Let me show you two people. Call them Marcus and Diane. Marcus grew up in a household where money was always tight. His dad worked 2 jobs. His mom clipped coupons not as a hobby, but as a survival strategy. They never went on vacation. Christmas was modest. He remembers once, around age 10, overhearing his parents argue about whether they could afford to fix the car. He didn't sleep well for weeks after that. Diane grew up solidly middle class. Not rich, but stable. Her parents talked openly about saving for college. They took a family vacation every summer. Nothing extravagant, but consistent. Money was a tool in her house, not a threat. Now, Marcus and Diane are married. They're both 34. Marcus earns $85,000 a year. Diane earns $72,000. Combined, they bring home over $150,000. They have $40,000 in savings, no credit card debt, a reasonable mortgage. On paper, they're winning. But here's what their kitchen table looks like. Diane wants to hire someone to clean the house twice a month, $150. Marcus says it's wasteful. Diane suggests upgrading their phones. Their current ones are 4 years old. Marcus says they still work fine. Diane finds a great deal on a week in Portugal. Marcus wants to wait. They can travel when they're older. And every one of these conversations ends the same way, with Diane feeling controlled and Marcus feeling like Diane doesn't understand what it means to lose everything. This is not a compatibility problem. This is not a values problem. This is one person still living in a childhood that ended 20 years ago, and both of them paying for it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but isn't it just smart to be careful with money? And look, yes, discipline matters. Frugality has real value, but there's a difference between choosing to be careful and being unable to choose anything else. Here's the line. One is a strategy, the other is a wound. And these wounds show up in 4 very specific ways inside marriages. Wound number 1, hoarding behavior. This looks like someone who can never spend, even when spending makes complete sense. They keep money in a savings account at 0.5% interest because moving it into the market feels unsafe. They let gift cards expire. They have trouble buying new clothes even when the old ones are worn out. Every dollar going out feels like a dollar getting closer to the edge. The math on this is real, by the way. If Marcus keeps $40,000 in a high-yield savings account instead of investing it, even at a conservative 7% market average, over 20 years, that's the difference between $40,000 and roughly $154,000. The fear of spending is costing him 6 figures in long-term wealth. Wound number 2, financial anxiety that doesn't match reality. This is where you check your bank account obsessively, not to manage it, to make sure it's still there. You feel a physical sense of dread when a large bill hits, even though you have the money. You can't enjoy a vacation because you're mentally calculating what each dinner costs. You feel guilty when you spend money on yourself. And here's what makes this wound especially destructive inside a marriage. Your partner can see the numbers. They know you're okay. And when you still act like the house is on fire, they stop trusting your read on reality. Wound number 3, using money as control. This one's harder to admit. When someone grows up poor, money sometimes becomes the thing they can finally control as an adult, and so they hold tight. Every purchase becomes a committee decision. The partner who earns more gets an outsized vote, and slowly the relationship starts to feel less like a partnership and more like a board meeting where one person holds all the shares. Wound number 4, shame that blocks communication. This is where it gets really interesting. People who grew up with financial instability often have a deep, unspoken shame about where they came from, and that shame makes honest money conversations almost impossible. So instead of saying, "I feel panicked when we talk about spending because I watched my family lose everything," they say, "You're just being irresponsible." They pick a fight about the receipt instead of naming the fear underneath it. Now, here's what most people don't realize. This wound doesn't only show up as hoarding. Sometimes growing up poor does the exact opposite. It creates a compulsive spender, because some people grow up watching their parents pinch every penny and never have anything, and they decide, consciously or not, that they will never live like that. The moment they have money, they spend it. It feels like freedom. It feels like proof that their childhood is over. This is called compensatory spending, and it's just as financially dangerous and just as rooted in childhood pain. So now imagine Marcus the hoarder married to someone like that. 2 money wounds sitting across from each other at the kitchen table. Neither one is wrong, neither one is being irrational in their own internal logic, but together they're destroying the household finances and probably the marriage. According to a survey by Ramsey Solutions, money fights are the second leading cause of divorce in the United States. Not affairs, not communication breakdowns, money. And I'd argue that most of those money fights aren't actually about money. They're actually about fear, about survival, about old stories running new lives. Okay, so what do you actually do about this? I want to be honest with you here. I'm not a therapist, and if what I've described in this video is hitting close to home, genuinely, a good therapist who specializes in financial therapy or trauma is worth more than any investment you'll ever make. That's real advice, not a disclaimer. But here are 3 things you can actually start doing this week. Step 1, name the wound in the room. The next time you and your spouse have a money disagreement that spirals, stop. Don't debate the credit card statement. Ask a different question. Ask, what does this feel like for you? And then actually listen, not to respond, to understand. Because 9 times out of 10, what you're fighting about is not what you're fighting about. There's a 10-year-old in one of you that got scared, and that kid deserves to be heard before the spreadsheet does. Step 2, build a safe-to-spend fund. This is practical and it works. If you or your partner grew up in scarcity, total financial integration can feel terrifying, so don't do it all at once. Agree on a number. Let's say $500 a month that each of you controls completely. No questions asked, no committee, no guilt. This money exists to be spent. It gives the person with financial anxiety a contained space to practice spending without feeling like they're putting the whole household at risk. And it gives the person on the other side the freedom they need without triggering their partner's fear response. Step 3, Separate facts from feelings in every money conversation. Here's a simple framework. Before you make any major financial decision together, write down two things: the facts and the feeling. The fact is, we have $40,000 in savings. The feeling is, spending any of it makes me feel like we're one emergency away from losing it all. Both of those statements can be true at the same time, and the moment you put them on the table together, not as weapons, but as information, the conversation changes completely. Here's what I want you to understand before this video ends. Growing up poor is not your fault. The fear it installed in you is not a character flaw. The spending it drove you towards is not weakness. These are adaptations. Your brain built a system to keep you safe when safe was hard to find, and that system worked. You survived, but you're not surviving anymore, or you shouldn't be. The question is whether the system that protected you then is protecting you now, or whether it's costing you the life and the relationship you actually want. There's a concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. The idea that people don't just recover from hard experiences, they can come out the other side with more depth, more wisdom, and more intentionality than they ever would have had otherwise. The people I've seen do this with money are extraordinary. They become the most deliberate savers, the most thoughtful spenders, the most generous givers, because they chose who they wanted to be, instead of just reacting to who they were raised to be. That's available to you. It's not a given. It takes work, but it's available. And it starts with this: being willing to tell the truth to your partner and to yourself about what money actually means to you and where that meaning came from. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments, not just think about it. What money behavior do you have that you know came from how you grew up? Maybe it's the inability to spend. Maybe it's the inability to save. Maybe it's the way you react when your partner wants to talk about money. Whatever it is, I want to read it because I think there are people watching this right now who need to know they're not alone in that thing. Drop it below. Let's actually talk about this. If this video hit different, give it a thumbs up. It tells me to keep going deeper on the stuff that actually matters. And if you're not subscribed yet, I put out videos every week on the psychology and math of building a life that actually makes sense. I'm Miles. Take care of yourselves.